I just want Lori to say good. All right, committee, we're going to come to order. We're going to do roll call, and then the realtors in front of me have guaranteed me they can knock out a bill in 3 minutes or less. So Barb, if you'd call the roll, and then we'll do net metering starting at 12:06, regardless of where we are. Go ahead.
Representative Blackburn.
Excused.
Thank you. Representative Clausen. Representative Clifford. Representative Duncan.
Here.
Vice Chair Air.
Here.
Representative Hunt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Here.
Thank
Committee,
you.
first thing we're going to do is Senate File 78. Representative Duncan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All we're doing is we're stripping out mandates and putting in so that we can be quicker to react to the Fed requirements. Essentially, that's it. We're just being more flexible.
I like it. Ms. Urbacate?
Mr. Chairman, Lori Urbacite with the Wyoming Realtors. We're very much in supportive of this bill. As the committee may know, probably 90% of the mortgages in Wyoming are either federally guaranteed, insured, or through the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac programs. And we have to use appraisers that meet the federal certification process, and they're ours. They like to change them on us. So this allows the appraiser board to be more flexible and change those requirements as they are mandated by the feds. We have no choice. We have to be able to do it. So we're very supportive of the bill.
I like it. Questions for Representative Duncan or Ms. Urbacate? Not seeing any. Ms. Zish, congrats on being the new Real Estate Commission Executive Director. Any comments on the bill?
Nope, I was just here to field any questions in case you had any.
Okay. Mr. Patrick and Mr. Thomas, I don't know if either of you are here on the real estate appraiser bill or the real, but if you are, turn on your camera. If not, I'll kick you back out in the lobby. Not seeing. Mr. Cooper is jumping in. Mr. Cooper, are you here on the real estate appraiser bill? If so, you can turn on your camera. Guessing not. All right, is there any other public comment on Senate File 78, real estate appraisers? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Nope.
I do
Miss-
apologize. It looks like Charlie Thomas does have his hand raised again.
Oh, Mr. Thomas. Welcome to the party. Floor is yours, but you're on mute.
I'm actually here to testify on SF 16, so not the real estate bill.
Most
I'm sorry.
excellent. Anyone else here to testify on Senate File 78? Seeing none, let's close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Clifford, seconded by Air. Discussion on having to follow the federal government, forcing us to change our laws. Seeing no discussion and hearing the question being called. That's a hint for someone to say the word question. Question being called. Barbie, if you call the roll on Senate File 78.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Clausen. Representative Clifford. Representative Duncan. Vice Chair Air. Representative Hunt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer. 9 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Duncan, you're carrying that on the floor? Representative Duncan, have you talked to Representative Greer or Senator Cooper about Senate File 126?
I will carry that one over to.
Well-
Do you want us to do that one real quick?
Sure. Sorry to make you walk back up. Senator Cooper will be so happy with me, which is good because I have 2 bills in his committee coming up. Senate File 126, real estate subdivision easement requirements. Representative Duncan, if you want to present it, or I'll just give it to Ms. Urbacite.
I would kick it over to Ms. Urbacite.
Hi, Lori. Welcome to corporations. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lori Urbacite representing the Wyoming Realtors, and we are in support of this bill as well. It's really a very simple bill. I believe, Mr. Chairman, you and I have spent a lot of hours talking subdivisions over the past many years. And this simply gives the county the ability to not mandate a 20-foot easement if a smaller easement is makes sense and works. I mean, it just gives them that flexibility that some subdivisions, it's just not necessary to have that wide of an easement. So we're very supportive of the bill.
And they do
It's
have to
optional.
say it protects the health, safety and welfare and provides adequate access. So there are stipulations and sideboards on it. Would that be correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Do you know what the Senate did, Ms. Orbachite? To make it a blue copy?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I do not know what they did.
No problem, but I can look real quick. Committee, any questions for Representative Duncan or Ms. Orbachite? Representative Clausen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is this just for counties or for cities as well? Or municipality?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go right ahead, Representative Duncan.
I believe this is county only.
In Title 18. The Senate did actually include the language for providing adequate access for the maintenance of the facilities. On the end of line 19 there. So health and safety and providing adequate access for maintenance. I'm just guessing somebody came in to ask for that one. All right, any other questions for the real estate agents of the state? Ms. Zish already went away. Anybody here in the waiting room in the lobby to testify in Senate File 126, real estate subdivisions? Apparently that's not the popular bill today. Anyone here in the room want to talk about Senate File 126? See, yes, Representative Fortner, come on down. Floor is yours on Senate File 126.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Representative Bill Fortner, House District 52, Campbell County. We have a little net metering going on in our district. Out of 28,000 meters,
Long bill, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Fortner, we're actually on real estate subdivisions, just because I wanted to kick it out before we got into the net metering bill. So,
okay, all right.
making sure you're okay for the time being on real estate subdivisions? It's
Uh,
126, it's Senator Cooper's bill.
I thought we had net metering up first today.
Yeah, we did, but Chairman prerogative.
Okay.
But don't, hang tight. So anybody else here to testify on Senate File 126? Not seeing any, and double check in the room. Not seeing any. We'll close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on Senate File 126? Moved by Hunt, seconded by Blackburn. I've read over it a couple times, talked to the good senator and the good representative, bringing it. It was an issue up in that county that said besides the law, they would have, redone an easement. So the county commissioners want to entertain, and it's got the right sideboards. I'm all for it. Any other discussion or amendments on Senate File 126? Seeing none and question being called. Barb, if you call the roll on Senate File 126.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Clausen. Representative Clifford. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air.
Aye.
Representative Hunt. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer. Mr. Chairman, 9 ayes.
In committee, it is my understanding that the good minerals chairman will be carrying that bill on the floor. So if you do have any concerns or discussion, talk to the vice chairwoman of minerals or the chairman of minerals. With that, maybe we can get through 3 bills in 15 minutes today.
Yes.
But if not, we're going to hear Senate File 16, which was an interim corporations committee bill. I do believe members, you have received, I don't know, a couple of emails in 3 rounds over the last 7 weeks. And that's just those of you new to the committee. So new net metering systems as an interim bill, the good vice chairman of corporations will explain Senate File 16 to the committee. Representative Air, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think I have the honor of presenting the bill that has generated the most emails of anyone will consider this session. And probably the biggest audience we have for a committee meeting ever this session. I want to explain a couple of things, and I'm going to go into the history of this bill a little bit, but I want to talk about a couple of things that it's not. I don't think anyone on the committee advanced this bill or proposed this bill as an effort to kill the rooftop solar industry, contrary to some popular opinion, nor was it advanced to line the pockets or increase the revenue or profits of the public utility companies, contrary to some opinion. The reason for this bill is to correct a cross subsidy that exists between rooftop solar customers and those who are non-rooftop solar utility customers. I know there is some question in some circles about the validity of that assertion, that this bill does create cross subsidies. But I believe if anyone who has an objective outlook and is an unbiased opinion and really understands utility electric rate making will concur that the current statute does create that cross subsidy. Just a little background information. We have about 206,000 customers in Wyoming who are on public utility, the 3 public utilities that serve in our state. We have 106,000 that are served by 14 cooperatives. Total of about 313,000 electric utility customers in the state of Wyoming. And of those, there are about 1,600 who have net metering installations. And I think we've heard from nearly all of them. A little history. We've been debating this bill in a committee and considering it and studying it for at least 2 years, probably a little more than that. On November of 2020, we approved a bill. It was amended at that committee and ended up being quite a bit different bill than it was when the committee started. And the assertion has been made that we didn't observe the public process. We didn't allow public input. I don't believe that that's true. We've allowed for lots of public input and we have received a lot of public input. It's not unusual for pieces of legislation to be amended on first or second reading on the floor of the House with significant changes to the bill or to the legislation without any public input. So the assertion that we have somehow skirted public input on this bill is, I don't think, warranted. We have allowed for ample public input. With that, I will start going through the bill and on page 1, starting on line 10, we add a new section in statute 3716-105, new net metering system, rates, terms, and conditions of use. And what this bill is doing is going to return to the Public Service or turn to the Public Service Commission for review and a public input process. They shall conduct public hearings and establish an appropriate system to regulate the rates, terms, and conditions of customer generators by all electric utilities. This would only apply to those who are for electric produced from net metering systems first operational on or after July 1st, 2022. So between now and July 1st of 2022, things will go on just as they are. In that time, the commission will open a docket, receive public input, so there will be plenty of chances for public input, and attempt to strike a balance between the interests of the customer generators and those of the electric utilities and ratepayers to ensure that the availability of safe, adequate, and reliable electricity service is just and reasonable at just and reasonable rates is provided. Of course, it's not possible to remove all subsidies. So except on a de minimis basis, other customers are not being subsidized by the customer generators and customer generators are not being subsidized by other customers. So a balance so that no one customer class is generating or is subsidizing another customer class. And then if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce my proposed amendment that will come on after line 13. We would propose to insert a section B. I think you all have copies of that. The section shall not apply to rural electric cooperatives who are eligible or who have opted out from the rate regulation by the Public Service Commission under Wyoming Statute 37-17-101 through 105. And the reason for this amendment is that the rural electric properties are not rate regulated currently under state statute since about 2008, I believe, or somewhere in that neighborhood. Somewhere in the 2000s, we exempted them or gave them the option at the membership's vote, upon a vote of their membership, to be exempted from Public Service Commission oversight. That statute has worked very well, and every cooperative except one in the state has taken that option. And there have been none that have decided to return or had any complaints filed with the commission.
And so Representative Bear, because I have so much public comment and amendments, I think we're all aware you brought an amendment. You can certainly fight for it at the appropriate time.
Okay.
That works. I wouldn't say that, but I have 52 people, it looks like, who want to provide testimony in this bill. So, and you probably need to get through all of them today.
Okay. So the reason that this should be turned over to the Public Service Commission is because electric utility rate making is a very technical, complicated process. It isn't well suited to be adjudicated before a legislative body. We have lots of issues in our state. Like we have an insurance department that handles insurance disputes. We have the banking commission that handles banking regulations. We have lots of state agencies designed to handle these technical issues, and the Public Service Commission is the best forum to decide how we should compensate and handle net metering customers. It is a rate-making issue, and that is a complicated issue that should be handled by those rate-making experts. Then on the last thing, this article is repealed July 1st, 2031, so that anyone who has a current net metering system will be able to stay under their current arrangements for the next 10 years. So if you've recently invested in a net metering installation, we want to protect you so that that investment isn't lost. I don't think the commission is going to completely outlaw the use of net metering systems. I think they're going to make sure that they pay their fair share, that they're balanced those interests with those of the other ratepayers, and that it's fair to everyone. And they will receive public input. Others will have a chance to give input. So anyway, with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill.
Questions for Representative Air? Not seeing Representative Hunt, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just quickly, Representative, is there a reason of urgency that we, on section 2, that we would be enacting this immediately upon completion of the process and not necessarily on July 1st?
Representative Bear, if you know.
I think it would be best to be enacted immediately so that the Public Service Commission could start that process of investigating and setting up a docket, receiving input, and begin to establish a program to regulate these net metering customers.
Okay. Further questions, Representative Roscoe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Air, my good friend, I agree that rate making is really a complicated process, but do you not think that doing this now when it's not quite, hasn't really been proven that it's needed right now, wouldn't put a cloud over all the industries involved with home generation? And it's just, our basic principle of giving industry certainty. This would sort of take it away because the rate structure would be unknown for at least a year. And this industry, I work with it quite a bit, and it's just growing all the time. I would hate to put any kind of a damper on it.
And making sure you're asking a question, right, Representative Roscoe?
Yeah, I started out with the question, do you not think that would put a cloud on the industry? Thank you, Representative Bear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have thoughts or?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to have for the next year, we're going to have the exact opposite effect. We're going to create a mini boom in the rooftop solar industry because people are going to rush to meet that deadline of after July 2022. But I think it's important that we take action now before it gets to be a problem. I mean, our solar penetration level right now is very small, but if it grows to 5 or 10%, then it gets very difficult to change at that point. It's too late then, because then the cross subsidies become really large and it's difficult to fix at that point. So I think we need to get something in place now that will create certainty down the road and balance the interests of the non-solar customers to those who do have solar installations.
So apparently you have a couple more questions coming at you, Representative Air. First, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Air. So reading your proposed amendment and based on the numbers that we were given about 100,000 cooperative customers and 200,000+ big utility customers. So if this amendment was adopted, that would basically take a third out from consideration. So that would be like a no vote for a third of the customers.
But no, I wouldn't characterize it as being a no vote for a third of the customers. It would, right now, the rural electric cooperatives rates are determined by their board of directors who are elected by the members. They're different than a public owned utility because the members are the owners and they have a voice at the ballot box to determine what the co-op does as far as rates. And so it doesn't make any sense that they would be brought under rate regulation for net metering customers when they're not re-regulated for any other electric rates. And we have municipal utility systems also that aren't included in here, and they're not included either under the same theory that the members have a voice in the operation of the utility company through their vote.
Okay, Representative Blackburn, do you have a question?
I'll pass, Mr. Chairman. We don't have enough time.
All right. Thank you, Representative Air. You're welcome to come back and join us. And just because I know I have 32 people listening online. For those of you new to the legislative process, we will hear from any other legislators, then we'll hear from agencies, and then we tend to hear from interest groups, any group that represents a wide number of members. So I believe we have AARP, the Rural Electric, a couple of others, and then we'll get into public comment. Depending on how much time we have for public comment is based on how long legislators in the PSC talk. So first up, any other legislators wish to speak on Senate File 16? Welcome back, Representative Fortner. And if you are online, you do not need to raise your yellow hand. I am certain to get to you. Representative Fortner, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Bill Fortner from House District 52, Campbell County. I've researched this net metering pretty extensively from the service company in my district, which takes in 5 counties in Wyoming, 1 county in Montana. They have 28,000 net or 28,000 meters, less than 60 net meters. They're the only utility in northeastern Wyoming that is regulated by the PSC. The other 3 have exempted themselves sometimes back. And the one that's doing the net metering in my area, the 5 counties, they want to opt out of the but they said they would like to bring an amendment. So anyways, that's where the amendment come from. The other 3 industries or electric utilities, they absolutely want nothing to do with net metering and they want to do away with it, but they're the ones that subsidize the most through government programs and things like that. The guys that's doing the net metering, actually net metering was started out, it was promoted by the utilities, and then now they want to do away with it. But as far as I know, the utility that we deal with, that I contract through, and the 5 counties in our area, we pay for the infrastructure. We pay to have that infrastructure maintained, whether you're a net meter or you're just online normally. That all comes through the meter service charge. That's what pays for the maintenance on the line. We pay up to $3,000-4,000 a pole anymore to get it put in the ground and get it brought into our places. So actually that line is already prepaid for, and the service is being paid for monthly. I do not understand why they think that somebody's getting a huge break because they go the net metering process. I brought up many times, well, would we be ahead just to chop the line off at the house and do away with net metering and just go off grid completely? And then they say, no, we don't want nothing to do with that. So it seems to me like there's catch-22 there. I don't really understand. Nobody can really explain to me a real reason why they want to get rid of net metering, other than they say that they're subsidized, and there's no way I can see where they're subsidized when they're putting in their own service, maintaining their own service, buying their own meter, and then paying monthly on that meter for a service charge to maintain the line. With that, I want to ask for any questions.
Questions, committee for Representative Fortner? Not seeing it this time. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you,
Representative Fortner.
Chairman.
Any other legislators wish to testify? Not seeing any of the current ones in the room jumping up. So with that, committee, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Petrie from the Public Service Commission. And I assume he might have other commissioners with him. And we'll give him a second to fire up his camera.
I'm here. I'm just having, there's some kind of problem with the interaction between the host and me pushing the start video button. So I guess you can't see me, but you can hear me?
Currently. But go ahead, let me see if this works. And if not, Chris, maybe it's better. You can make faces at us. But even if you can't get your camera to work, I guess, go ahead. As this bill would affect certainly, well, your agency and your, I guess, quasi-judicial separate operating agency. Any thoughts the PSC has in regards to Senate File 16?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just say that this bill appears to the Public Service Commission to give it the assignment of inquiring into the existing arrangement for net meters, determining whether there are subsidies that are passing between net meters and non-net metering customers. And if such subsidies are discovered, to create a rate structure for each of the utilities for which that is the situation, to eliminate, at least to reduce to a de minimis level, any such subsidies like that. The public process that is described, called for in this bill, is the kind of work that the commission does all the time. I don't believe that we'll have any problems accomplishing this assignment. And I would also just like to add that the question about the effective date, I would very much encourage immediate effectiveness on this bill if it's passed, because as was said, we will need some time to get this all accomplished before July of 2022. So we would want to be free to begin immediately if this law takes effect. And then I'd be happy to address any questions.
Okay, questions for the Public Service Commission, starting with Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just am trying to get a handle on how large or small the body of people that will be affected is. So we heard testimony earlier that give or take there's 100,000 customers that are involved with co-ops, 200,000 give or take with the larger utilities, and about 1,600 customers that have net metering installed. So if you take out the cooperative, that leaves 2/3 of 1,600, give or take, that's 1,000, maybe 960, if you want to get more technical with your math. So is the body of people that are going to be affected by this about 960? That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Petrie, if those numbers sound correct to you?
Chairman, those numbers do sound like they're in the ballpark. I don't have anything that's exactly current for a statewide number, but the net metering penetration in Wyoming is relatively low, and that number does sound approximately correct.
Further questions for the Public Service Commission? Representative Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Petrie, I'm just for my own education, is legislation needed for this to go for you to look at these rates?
Mr. Petrie, I
Thank
think
you,
you
Mr. Chairman.
understand the question. Do you need statutory authority to engage in further understanding of what appropriate rates would be, or does that information kind of come naturally when you look at rate cases?
Mr. Chairman, there is a provision in the existing statutory scheme for net metering that prohibits any fee or charge that would increase the customer generator's minimum monthly charge to an amount greater than that of other customers. And that does present something of an obstacle to our regular rate making process, addressing any subsidy that might exist in the net metering context. So in the existing statute, there is that provision that limits the commission's rate-making options if it were to inquire into the existence of any subsidies and attempt to eliminate them. That prohibition is something of a problem.
Okay, Representative McGuire, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a follow-up to that. So if we're dealing with give or take about 1,000 people, is there anything that would prevent you from saying a pro forma that the adjustment would be X number of dollars per month or X number of dollars per kilowatt? I mean, is there some kind of a rule or reg that would prevent you from giving us a pro forma number? Thank you.
Mr. Petrie.
Mr. Chairman, there wouldn't really be anything against that would prohibit us from, if I understand, giving you a number that would establish the extent of any subsidy that might exist under current rates. That would be a number that would vary by utility. And that's a number that has been, although not in a public contested case sort of process, developed and presented to the committees in the interim. I think the Office of Consumer Advocate presented some of that information and as well as some of the public utilities, but certainly that is a number that can be discovered.
Follow up, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if my math is, give or take correct, so if there's 3 big utilities, 1,000 people, that'd be 330 people, 330 cases, give or take, that we'd be looking for a pro forma number.
Mr. Petrie, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking of it as perhaps an average net metering subsidy number by utility rather than by customer. So, while it would be a subclass in residential and commercial customer groups, that would be the subclass of those within each of those groups that are net metering. And those are going to vary. The amount of the subsidy, if there is one, that any given customer is receiving or paying, it's going to vary depending on that customer's usage and depending on how much fixed costs are being recovered by their utility in the volumetric rate. So that is not a tremendously large number of customers, and that number for each customer could probably be derived in a rate setting or an investigative proceeding.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Petrie. Anyone else with you in the Public Service Commission want to testify?
Mr. Chairman, that is all I have unless there are other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. I think we have Bryce Freeman from the Office of Consumer Advocate here. Would you please come forward and
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Freeman. You did want to testify, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I promised you the other day that I would be back and here I am. And so I'll try to be as brief as I can here. I have worked on this issue with the Joint Interim Committee for about the last 3 years. I've done a lot of research and analysis. I worked with individual members of both the Senate and House Corporations Committee on this issue of net metering. And it's a hard issue. It's a complicated issue. This is a complicated area of rate making. One thing I want the committee to understand as a threshold matter is I am charged by statute with representing all ratepayers and all classes of customers in Wyoming. And so the only way I can preserve my sanity and carry out that charge that I've been given by the legislature is to make sure essentially that everybody's paying their fair share. And that doesn't just have to do with net metering. You know, 20 years ago, we had a regulatory system where large industrial customers were charged way more than their cost of service in order to provide a subsidy for smaller commercial and residential customers. That is the kind of system that's not sustainable because those larger customers have options. They can self-generate, build a gas turbine, whatever. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to avoid is things that are bad for the system and bad for ratepayers generally when you treat discrete groups of ratepayers differently than other groups. What I have found in my analysis, well, just to finish that thought off, you may hear from others that changing the existing system is a way of penalizing people who want to install their own generation. And obviously, I'm not in favor of that because I represent those customers. You know, but people who want to install their own generation is fine with me, and they ought to get a fair shake in the process. They ought to have some surety that the rates that they're going to pay and the revenues that they're going to generate from their net metering system are fairly determined and they're fair relative to the rates that are paid by other customers. Now, having said that, the analysis that I've done, and I've done a lot of analysis, specific quantitative analysis on the issue in Wyoming, as well as reviewing and analyzing what's going on in other parts of the country. The fact that there is a subsidy under the current legacy regulatory system in Wyoming and the way that we set rates flowing between net metered customers and non-net metered customers is indisputable. There is a subsidy there. Now, what we do with that subsidy, how much that subsidy is, and the rate design approaches to fix that and make it fair for everybody, I think there's a lot to unpack there. While most states in the country started out with the sort of system that we have in Wyoming, where you pay a net metering customer the retail rate for excess generation that they put back on the system. The vast majority of the other states in the country have moved away from that because it's not sustainable. Some of them, like Arizona, like Utah, waited so long that they really had a big problem on their hand. And one of the things I think is interesting, and personally I'm in favor of it, and I think this bill does that, is I think it would be unfair to existing net metering customers to pull the rug out from, excuse me, the rug out from under them, so to speak, and change this, to something that they didn't bargain for when they put their system in. So that's one thing I think to keep in mind, is this bill would make the new system effective for new net metering systems that come into place in 2022. People that already have net metering systems, I think, are grandfathered. So,
Can I throw a question at you then? Rippon and McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to interrupt you. I appreciate it so very much. So how do I get something that I can understand, which would be a one-page spreadsheet that would say utility A, net metering customer numbers, multiplier, that would be the difference that would take care of whatever subsidy there is for that utility, multiplied by however it's going to be measured, kilowatt hours or whatever their usage is, and dollar amount. How can I get that in a simple one sheet spreadsheet for the three major utilities that we're talking about, so I can see what the difference is? I don't know if we're talking about $1 million or $6 a year. I have no idea.
Mr. Freeman, does your office provide that, or I'm sure the utilities are going to come forward, but go ahead if you know how to quantify that, and can you guys do that in OCA?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I have actually done that analysis, and I have a spreadsheet handy that I can send to the committee. It's one that I provided to the committee previously. What you'll see on that spreadsheet is the subsidy that is being paid currently by non-net metering customers is not very big, something less than $1 per month. The subsidy to net metering customers is in the range of $60 to $70 a month, depending on the utility. But I'll be happy to share that with you again, Representative McGuire. I just wanted to follow up with a couple of points, Mr. Chairman, and I'll get out of your hair so you can get the public comment. So, you've heard some arguments that this isn't a very big problem, that, we've only got a handful of customers in the state. It is growing rapidly. National experts that I've read and analyzed their work say that, you're probably really going to start having a problem at about a 5% penetration rate. One of our major investor-owned utilities is about 1% now. This is one of those problems that's going to be a lot easier to get our arms around if we get out in front of it, rather than waiting until it's a real problem. We've seen what's happened in other states when that happened. Arizona, for one, where they have a lot of sunshine, waited until they had a 30-40% penetration rate, where there was millions of dollars in subsidies flowing. And of course, entrenched interests that didn't want to see that change at all. So this is one of those things where we need to, I think, get in front of the problem as soon as we can and come up with a solution. And I think the Public Service Commission, because this is such a complicated area, is the right place to do it. There are, offsetting considerations that I think need to be made. In some of the programs that have been adopted around the country, the fact that distributed generation, which is sort of a broad category for customer-owned generation, reduces line losses in the distribution system. So there are some locational considerations.
Are any of those considerations statutory that we need to put in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, no, I think as broadly as you can paint this to give the commission as much latitude to explore solutions that will make sense for all customers, the better off we'll be. So like I say, most states have moved away from this, and there are a lot of creative solutions out there that actually have been arrived at through this type of a process where you have the industry come in, you have customers come in, you have experts like me, you might have other experts come in and hopefully arrive at a solution that's fair to everybody. One last thought. The legislature over the last couple of years has done a lot to try to keep our what is rapidly becoming a precious resource, our coal-fired generation fleet, and the reliability and system stability qualities that those plants provide to the system. And I applaud that work. And we've been very involved in the commission rulemakings that have been precipitated, excuse me, by those acts. So I hope that, every kilowatt hour that's generated by a customer-owned resource is a kilowatt hour that's not generated by a coal plant or a utility scale renewable resource. And customer-owned generation, rooftop solar and micro wind turbines are on the order of 5 times more expensive than utility scale renewable generation. So while I believe that all customers ought to be able to do what they think is in their best interest, we shouldn't be subsidizing them to provide system generation at the expense of less expensive resources and at the expense of our coal-fired resources. So,
All right, further questions for the OCA? See, Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick, simple answer to a very complex question. Mr. Freeman, you're probably, if you're not the utmost expert, one of the highest up experts in rate making and understand the overall picture of utility. And I think something, I've been in this conversation for 2 years, and I think something that's been left out is the very basic portion of how electrical generation and the billing for that is considered. So Mr. Freeman, would you give us a basic overview? And when I say basic, I don't mean the 7-state. I mean basic overview of how billing for a utility would work, as in the let's say the generation, whether it's a coal-fired power plant, is distributed through all customers and then rebilled back to customer. Even though it says kilowatt hour, it's not per kilowatt hour, it's for the service that's provided. So roughly, I've heard this number before, but roughly 87% of your kilowatt hour bill is for the service, as in a coal-fired power plant being depreciated for 50 years or a wind turbine being depreciated for 14 years. Could you give us just as basic as you can do it in a short amount of time?
And Reverend Cloud, that's pertinent to the discussion on net metering in your opinion? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Freeman. Please be short. I have 40 people and every minute they lose 5 seconds each. So
Chairman Zwanitzer, Representative Clausen, you're right on track. Maybe the numbers are off just a little bit. About 70% of the investment that a utility makes to serve customers is capital investment. It's not variable investment. So it would be the poles, the wires, the transformers, substations, transmission lines, generators, all that stuff. So it doesn't matter whether you use a kilowatt hour or 1,000,000 kilowatt hours, that investment is fixed on the part of the utility. The other 30% is variable fuel and operations and maintenance costs and those sort of things that do vary depending on whether you use 1 kilowatt or 1,000,000. The problem that we've had over the years, and this is not just Wyoming, it's, oh, thank you. It's really it's really the way rates are set nationwide is recover the majority of those fixed costs that don't vary with usage in the volumetric charge. And so you can see that a net metering customer who basically doesn't use anything because they're generating their own electricity on their rooftop avoids paying for all of those fixed costs, even though they're still using the facilities that the utility invested in to serve them, because when their rooftop solar isn't generating power, they have to bring power in to fill in the gap. And so, you know, they're not paying for that necessarily, you know, in the volumetric rate, and the fixed cost that they pay on a monthly basis doesn't come close to covering it. So that's where the subsidy is.
further questions, Representative Air.
Just to follow up and just to clarify what you were saying, Mr. Freeman. I want to make sure that everyone understands that that monthly customer charge that most residential customers pay in this state only covers a small portion of the total fixed cost to serve that customer. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Air, that's correct. The fixed costs are in the range of $60 to $70 a month, and the fixed customer charges in the range for our utilities of $10 to $20 a month.
Okay, further questions for the OCA, Representative Clausen.
Mr. Freeman, so just something else that was left out of this conversation over the last 2 years is how a utility bills for that and then how long electricity lasts. So could you just cover real quickly the same, I think you did an excellent job, real quickly, how a utility bills the customers based on the entire group together, not that they don't make any more or any less, depending on how much electricity is consumed.
Mr. Freeman, would you agree or go ahead?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I agree. And Representative Clausen, you know, utility rates are set on an average basis. So what we do is we add up all the costs through what we call a cost of service study. We add up all the costs that are attributable to individual classes of customers. And we design rates that recover all of those costs on average for the customers. If you use more or less than average, you're going to pay more or less than your cost of service, but that's just an artifact of average cost rate making. There's really nothing we can do about that. What we try to do is make sure that when we set up the classes that all customers have relatively homogeneous usage so that there isn't big subsidies flowing on an intra-class basis.
Other questions? Everybody good? Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee. So last time when I said you don't need to have your yellow hand online, I had 4 more people do it on me. But I'm going to try to get to everybody's questions. I don't think we have any other agencies here who wish to testify. That'd be correct. Agency, sir? Nope. Okay, so with that, we're going to hit a couple of the interest groups. Let's start with, I guess we'll just start with AARP. I assume they're neutral, and I'll start bringing people into the room. Then we also have PRBRC, and I'll throw in the utilities kind of as we go. So, I mean, we don't need 9 people to say the same thing and beat up on the utilities. So I'll try to intersperse, both sides as much as I can. Mr. Laycock, welcome to Corporations. Floor is yours. And I think we're the point, you get 1 minute and 50 seconds. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. I'm Tom Laycock, Associate State Director for AARP Wyoming. We're a nonpartisan organization representing 83,000 members in the state aged 50 and over. AARP likes to keep an eye out for members when it comes to utility rate changes. And based on what we've seen in this bill, we believe the PSC offers the subject matter expertise when it comes to determining policy around net metering. We certainly support that aspect of the bill. AARP policy was mentioned to you in a letter that you may have received from several rural electric co-ops. I thought I might clarify that policy for you. And if you're ever interested, just Google AARP policy book. It can be found online, and you're welcome to look through this for yourself. But the policy reads, and I quote, AARP believes policymakers should ensure that solar customers pay their fair share of costs and fees. They should also be fairly compensated for the value of energy they return to the grid. If changes are to be made to compensation or changes for solar customers, a fair and reasonable transition period should be included before current solar customers are charged their rate. End quote. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to say. I'll get out of your hair. We appreciate the fact that the PSC is being looked to help develop this new policy.
Questions committee for AARP. All right, with that, next we're going to go to the PRBRC. I think Ms. Anderson and Ms. Leiniger are acting on their behalf if they'd turn on their cameras at this time. Welcome, Ms. Anderson and Ms. Leiniger. Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this is Monica Leininger. I believe the host has stopped my video, so I'm asking if it can be turned on.
That work? It did.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Monica Leininger from the Powder River Basin Resource Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment in front of all of you today on this very important issue. On behalf of our organization, who are members that are a combination of solar owners and non-solar owners, we are strongly opposed to Senate File 16 as it creates uncertainty for this industry and its customers, hurts jobs across our state, and creates barriers for Wyoming citizens to have energy choice and freedom. I would point out that the legislature has never formally studied this issue. The interim committee did not formally study this issue and the impact on ratepayers. So we encourage you all to ask the Public Service Commission to study this issue before choosing to repeal the statute and create uncertainty for an industry and its customers without the data and numbers before you. As the gentleman from the Office of Consumer Advocate said, other agencies and utility expert entities, including the Department of Energy, National Berkeley Laboratory, National Association of Utility Commissioners, and the Interstate Renewable Energy Office Council have studied this issue. These experts have all found out that at Wyoming's current net metering integration level of 0.06%, cost shifting is either non-existent or negligible. These studies continually show that real concerns about cost shifting only take place when a state reaches 5 to 10% level of integration, far where we are at now. Mr. Chairman, if there isn't a cost shift as a result of net metering, and there are very strong policy reasons to let the current system that has been in statute for 2 decades now to remain, the growing small businesses around the state are bringing jobs and tax revenue and economic diversification to our communities. And the current system allows nonprofits, businesses, and residents to save money on their electricity bills. Why are we considering changes to net metering and penalizing this small industry and its customers?
All right, I need to stop you there. Any questions? I do want to make sure I understand your testimony, Ms. Leininger. You were in favor or against the bill?
We are strongly opposed to the bill, Mr. Chairman, and I am hoping to quickly present the amendment that I provided to the committee.
And then, well, let me ask you one more question. So your testimony was you do believe the Public Service Commission should investigate and get a better idea, but you don't agree with the bill having the Public Service Commission regulate the rates? You got to clarify that for me, what the difference is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question, and I'd be happy to. We have strong concerns with the language in the bill, as it was not properly vetted in our opinion, and we do think that the Senate had several amendments to clarify some issues. The problem is you're repealing the statute and creating uncertainty for customers, both existing and future customers, with the way that the current bill is written. So I'll share my amendment that if the committee does move forward with the bill, our organization believes that we need to clarify the grandfathering clause. One of the amendments that's most critically needed is to clarify how current systems will be grandfathered under the rules that exist in statute right now. The bill creates uncertainty through the grandfathering clause because it initially grandfathers them under the current rules, opposed to having them fall into the new PSC rules.
So help me out what the actual amendment is. I'm sorry, I got 45 people. That amendment is from the PRBRC. I do have a copy of it. If we have any questions on the amendment at the appropriate time, I will certainly hit you up, Ms. Leininger. Certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr.
Miss-
Chairman, Shannon Anderson, also on behalf of Powder River Basin Resource Council, if I may just jump in just very briefly.
Very briefly, go for it, Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, the issue here is that the statute presupposes that there is a significant subsidy that must be addressed by the Public Service Commission, as opposed to letting the Public Service Commission study the issue and determine whether that's the case. So that's really the issue with the bill, is that it's predetermining the outcome of a Public Service Commission study that has not yet happened. And so that's why we're opposed to the bill the way it's written. And I just offer personal comments. You can see probably from my background, I'm personally a solar owner, a recent one. I paid for my system. The utility didn't pay for it. I wrote the check. I contributed sales tax, property taxes, helps jobs. And so really I asked the question, Mr. Chairman, who's subsidizing who? And thank you again for the opportunity. I hope you get through all the testimony. There's a lot of people that want to talk to you today, so I hope you let them talk. Thanks.
Several of them are your members. Representative Duncan, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is, if the PSC is allowed to, if this bill goes into effect immediately, and that gives the PSC time to set things up, and then nothing for new people doesn't go in until 2022, according to your amendment, then that gives time for the PSC to understand the issue and the situation for this supposed subsidy. So if there is no subsidy, the PSC will understand and prove that there's no subsidy. Or if there is one, then there shouldn't be an issue. So that's my complication with the last 2 years of this testimony that supposedly hasn't been studied and researched when I've been living this for the last 2 years. So help me understand, if we're enacting the PSC to be able to take over immediately, to get prepared, and this amendment is not going moving forward for till 2022, doesn't that in effect allow them to absolve your fears that about the subsidies, or if not having any subsidies?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Duncan, thank you for the question. And I believe the amendment I provided is really focusing on the grandfathering issue. The portion of the bill that we have a problem with is page 2, line 15 on the engrossed copy that says this article is repealed July 1, 2031. So the problem is that if you repeal the article that existing net metering systems are governed under, then what will happen in 10 years to these systems that have, 20, 40 years ahead of them, 20, 30 years ahead of them at that point? So we're just asking that the committee considers not repealing the statute and at least making it a true grandfathering statute, letting existing systems fall under the deal they signed up for, essentially.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I think there may be a misunderstanding. The blue sheet that I have on page 1, it says 3716-105 is created. And then if you go to the last portion of that, which is B, this article is repealed July 1st, 2031. I believe that's a sunset clause. I don't think that's a repealer. So you may want to look at that again. That may be where the misunderstanding is coming from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, Representative Guire, there's no difference in our view. The sunset repeals the statute. So although it doesn't specifically say that the entire statute is repealed in the introductory language of the bill, that's the effect of the sunset.
All right, thank you very much. I saw Commissioner Throne walk in, just making sure you heard Commissioner Peachy's testimony. We're good. All right, Mr. Odekoven, come on down. Although I'm not sure the sheriffs and chiefs, or maybe you're going as a private citizen. Then we have Mr. Brubaker in the room next, and then we'll do 3 more people in the Zoom. Welcome, Mr. Odekoven.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Odekoven. Today, a rancher from north of Gillette. So wanted to step in and cover my badge for a moment and suggest as a rural rancher, a couple of comments on the issues before you. I followed the issue along, attended several of the meetings, looked at a room of 60 folks, decided not to testify. Thank you for indulging me today and letting me jump in ever so slightly. So I sense I'm a little early to the discussion for today. So let me limit my comments a little bit to a couple of the issues that you'll get to in a few minutes. And preface that by saying that our family are lifelong members of a co-op that provides electricity to the ranch and are very sensitive to the profit / loss / the viability of the co-op that services the ranch. And in the long run, want to make sure that that viability is there in the long run. Having said that, also of note is I am one of those net meter customers and have installed in system to be able to reduce some of the costs. And actually with the cooperation of my co-op, have installed a solar system for water well generation at the ranch as well. So in amongst and has worked well with the co-ops. Later in your discussion, if you choose to move this bill forward, that's an if, you'll have a discussion on the amendment to take co-ops out of the bill, if you will. I would be speaking in favor of that amendment so that I can maintain my relationship with my local co-op who understands our area, who understands our costs, who understands our expenses to negotiate that discussion with them. Because also as part of my background in ethics, I don't want a free ride. I don't want anybody else paying for my stuff, my decision, my stuff, and I'm willing to pay my fair share if I understand what that fair share is and would like to have that opportunity to discuss that with my local co-op, as opposed to another entity somewhere doing something, Mr. Chairman. So if you choose to do the bill, that's one thing. And if you choose to do it, please support the amendment that takes my local co-op out so that we can maintain that relationship and have those discussions of costs and benefits for the solar system involved in my net metering and my other solar at the ranch, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Odekoven. Any questions? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just can't resist asking Sheriff Odekoven a question or two. So the numbers that we've just been presented, and again, I'm late to this. So the numbers we've just been presented as give or take on the co-ops, there's about 106,400 customers. Of those, 533 have net meters. So I'm just curious, let's say that we do take that out in the amendment and you're left out on your own. Let's say all 533 of you felt like you were being mistreated by your co-op. I mean, democratically, that you have absolutely no voting power there. How are you going, is there an appeal process? Do you have an ability, let's say that they jam you guys, how are you even going to get any kind of satisfaction?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Otakoven.
Thank you. And at some point in the future, that may be a very viable question or a very viable point. I'm hoping that because our board of directors for our local co-op are locally elected, that we can have that personal relationship with our representative, if you will, to help settle some of those disputes. But you could very well hold the key to the part of the problem at some point in the future is that we may not have that appeal process in a reasonable manner. And thus there would be a bill before you, I guess, at that point to have that discussion. I'm pretty confident at the moment that my local folks can do just that.
Thank you, Mr. Otakoven. Any other questions? I just might add, there is an appeal process through that cooperative, and I think Mr. Sean Taylor can address that for us.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that is correct and it goes to the PSC, but I didn't want to go there without having a little backup. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think we'll go to the co-ops. Mr. Taylor, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member of the committee. My name is Sean Taylor, Executive Director of the Wyoming Rural Electric Association. Everybody's going to say it, but I'm going to try and be brief. I furnished the committee with a letter yesterday from every one of the elected co-op directors from the 14 distribution cooperatives across the state, stating that the letter went into some of the counterpoint that you all heard from or received in a number of emails. But the point being is that the bill is supported by not just me. I speak on behalf of 14 distribution cooperatives who all have elected directors, and they all in the letter say this is the right thing to do. I will touch on a couple of things, and I would agree with Representative Aarp and Representative Duncan. The issue of net metering has been studied and studied and studied. Maybe not this particular bill, but it's been studied for a number of years, and we've never gotten to a point of adopting a law or updating the net metering statutes. And why is that? Because it's so complicated. You heard Mr. Freeman go into some of these complications of rate making. It's just not suited well for this body. This is the right bill. This is the bill that should have been introduced 20 years ago when net metering first came around. Let the experts at the PSC take care of this. And we obviously support the amendment that Representative Aarp is going to offer because we feel we have the expertise at the cooperatives as well to set our own rates. That's why we ran the legislation 15 years ago or so to opt out from PSC rate regulation. We have the expertise at our local co-ops. We keep this a local decision, as Mr. Otakoven just pointed out. And so we support the bill because that's the right thing to do. Let the experts at the PSC decide this. And if you want to presuppose that there's a subsidy or not, if you want to talk about job losses or not, if you believe this side or that side, if you can strip all that away, this is the right bill, Mr. Chairman, because you instruct a number of agencies to figure out what's right? Why is this any different? And so for that reason, I would stand in support of the bill. Obviously, if I could, to Mr. or Representative McGuire's question about recourse, and Representative Aarp kind of touched on it. When we passed the opt-out bill 15 years ago for our co-ops, which again, every co-op with the exception of one has opted out, and that one is probably going to go there real soon. They all opted out, and we haven't had one rate complaint that's been taken all the way to the PSC. The recourse is first, if you have a complaint, you take it to your elected board of directors. And if you're not satisfied with the decision or the reasoning for a rate change or a rate increase or a rate decrease, they have happened every now and then you can take it to the PSC, and not once has it gone there. So I think that's a pretty good track record for the cooperatives. This would be no different. This is a rate. It's a net metering rate. So the recourse would be the same, Mr. Representative McGuire. If a net metering customer isn't happy with the way the co-op has designed the net metering rate, they go to the co-op director and management first, And if they're still not happy, they can take it all the way to the PSC. We're confident in our ability to set the correct net metering rate. So we treat all of our members fairly. That's what we do as a cooperative. We treat all of our members fairly, and we want to work with all of our net metering customers. And we have. There's several examples where we've tried to figure out the right way to do this so they can do what they want to do, and it's not impactful on the rest of our members. So I'll just leave you. I know you got a lot more to come, but this is the right bill. Whether you like the process, how it got here or not, whether you agree with me or disagree with me or whoever else gets up here, this I think is the simplest way to do it. Let the experts take care of it, and then you'll never have to hear about net metering again.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So you testified you're in favor of the bill.
Yes, sir.
My question is, are you in favor of the Air amendment that would take you out of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, yes, to both. To be clear, our expectation is that we would still, just like we were taken out of rate making from the PSC, this is the same thing. We're taken out of the bill because we're going to handle this back home, if that makes sense.
So if you're taken out of the bill with the Air amendment, and one of your 533 net metering customers does not agree with a change that's made with regard to their rate, then tell me what the process would be and ultimately where they would end up in order to appeal any rate change. Thank you.
You bet. Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, just like we do with all of our other rates. If a net metering customer isn't happy, they would go to the board of directors and the management. They would all sit down and explain, this is why we set this rate the way we did. And if they aren't happy, if that one customer isn't happy with it, they can take that to the PSC, and the PSC would do a rate case basically, like they do or are instructed to do. And it's that 3717-101, I believe, is the statute reference where the co-ops were allowed to opt out. This is a rate. So it would be treated the same way. Go to the board first. If you're not happy, you can go to the PSC. And again, we haven't had one instance where it's gone all the way to the PSC.
Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Taylor, you presented the committee with the numbers, this information. How up to date is that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hunt, I think it's fairly close. It's in the ballpark. I mean, I put these numbers together over the past couple days. So I think it's pretty close.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just quickly took it upon myself that so out of the over 300,000 total meters, 1,600 of those are net meters, coming up with just a tick over 0.5%. You mentioned that there's that this has just sort of come into being in the last 20 or so years. So is there any estimate or numbers on how many new customers are being added in the last, annually over the past, say, 5 years? And I understand that it sort of seems to be growing somewhat exponentially as more people hear about it. But how much growth have you seen in this in the last, say, 3 to 5 years?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Representative Hunt, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. It would be pretty easy to get those numbers, and I can certainly do that. I will say, and this is just an example, and it just happens to be Representative Ayer's old co-op, in 1 month, and they're a fairly small co-op. In 1 month, they had a request for 12 net metering installations. And it kind of goes, your question kind of goes to the point that I believe Representative Roscoe asked earlier, why do this now? This isn't unique to Wyoming. States all across are saying, holy cow, our net metering statutes are out of date and out of whack with the rate structure of the subsidy, right? Our subsidy's grown so much. I had a graph that I should have given you all, but it shows Utah, and they had a much more favorable net metering subsidy in Utah than we did, or than we have, and the installation just skyrocketed, right? It was just straight up, and now Utah's scrambling to try and claw that back because that subsidy's gotten so out of whack. California, the mecca of renewable energy, doing the same thing. They're like, this is, and then California's, they're talking billions of dollars.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 40 minutes.
Representative.
Oh, excuse me. Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taylor, would you give an explanation of, under the co-op model, where the corporate profits or where the profits would go to any co-op if for some reason there's this perception that the co-ops are looking to gain revenue, or not co-ops, but utilities in general are looking to gain revenue. If this was a net positive for your co-op members, where would those funds go to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Clausen. Great question. Co-ops are not for profit. We set all our rates, whether it be a net metering rate or a different class of rate, at just enough so we can operate, right? And any leftover that we have at the end of the year, we return to our members in what we call capital credits. It's the members' equity in our co-op. So we have zero interest in artificially inflating rates, whether it's a net metering rate or another rate, because in the end, what we receive back, we give back to our membership. That's the nature of the cooperative. It's a member-owned utility. And so it's not a profit margin for us or a profit reason for us to inflate artificially in rates for anything, whether it's a net metering rate or a non-net metering rate.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Oh,
Nope.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Taylor. So you and I had some questions, and I've had this since I've been elected to serve on this committee. And we talked about the process. And process is very, very important to me. So is transparency and ensuring that all voices are heard. And I know this issue is probably not going to go away, and I can't believe I'm saying this, so we can kick the can down the road. But I'm a strong advocate of process and transparency, and I just don't think that happened. I don't like it. I didn't like it, how it went. And you and I had that discussion. And could there be a worse bill or a better bill? But in your opinion, if there's a formal study, is it do or die? You know, if we don't pass this bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Clifford, thanks for that question. It's not a do or die if this bill doesn't pass, but it's going to be worse. You're going to see that subsidy as Mr. Freeman talked about. In a year from now, we could be at, we're at 1,600 now. In a year from now, we could be at 5,000 meters, and that subsidy issue is going to be worse. And you're going to have more people that may be enjoying the subsidy and are going to be more upset if we try and fix it then. So that's why I think the sense of urgency is now, because it's only going to get worse the longer you kick the can down the road. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, we did have a good conversation about the process, and I agree. There was a bit of a bait and switch at that committee meeting, but the issue of net metering itself has been studied ad nauseum. In my 16 years with the co-ops, it seems to be an issue every year. And like I said earlier, the reason we haven't been able to get to anywhere with it is because it's so complicated, and we haven't asked the experts to step in. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 35 minutes left, and we've got a lot of people left. So we're going to have to start limiting it to 2 minutes. And I'm going to bring in Mr. Brubaker from the Airport Association right now. Go ahead, Mr. Brubaker.
Good morning or good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Devin Brubaker. I'm the airport director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport in Rock Springs. I speak today on behalf of our airport and the Wyoming Airports Coalition opposed to this bill. The Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport was the first airport in Wyoming to install a net metered solar farm in 2018. We undertook the project and have future net metering projects planned to ensure that we continue to find ways to drive our fiscal dependency on local taxpayers lower. Public entities, including airports, school districts, cities, counties, and towns, can use net metering as it exists today to drive our costs lower, much the way that we have here at our airport. This bill does not direct the PSC to consider other factors, including economic diversification, socioeconomic impacts, grid reliability, and workforce retention in the valuation of net metering. Recent legislation has asked the PSC to consider many of those same factors when it comes to coal-powered facilities. Why not treat the customer-generated facilities the same? The testimony today regarding the fixed cost of the utility not being covered by the base monthly charge is where the real problem exists. If the monthly fixed cost of the customer covered the actual fixed costs in our rate setting methods, the usage by each customer would be a true usage cost. It would treat a customer that uses net metering the same as a customer that does not. It would treat a customer that has installed LEDs the same way that a customer has installed incandescent bulbs is treated. And it would treat a customer that installs energy efficient appliances the same as someone that has not. If we're really concerned about a cost shift, shouldn't we address all of them? Is this really an issue of cost shifting or an issue of our state's desire to resist this rapidly growing industry? Let's let the PSC focus on more pressing issue of protecting our coal industry and not waste time on an issue that does not exist in net metering rate structure. In the previous testimony, it was mentioned that by waiting, it could be a 5,000 meter issue. Sure would be nice to have the jobs created that 5,000 meters on net metering would result in. How many jobs and economic activity would that create? By passing this bill, you put that at risk. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brubaker. You made it under 2 minutes. Very good. Very well done. Any questions? Anyone in the room wish to testify as an individual? I'll bring this gentleman right up here at the front. And I know you've waited a long time to testify and you have a lot of things to say, but we're just limited in time. We're going to have to limit you to 2 minutes. Can you do it in 2 minutes?
Okay, I see this mic's on. Is that correct? You can hear me? Okay, well, I've learned some interesting things this morning, all of which I don't care to hear about. I never realized that all the solar energy that is produced by my system at home is considered a subsidy. And I think that's what Mr. Freeman alluded to. I don't see that as a subsidy. If that's what it is, it's misnamed, and you guys are discriminating against me because you're going to set out a co-op. I and all the rest of us that own solar systems in this state are being discriminated against by your amendment, Mr. Aarp. Because they've argued a good point. I'm not going to dispute that. But I, as an individual, am being discriminated against. I don't know. Let me ask a question of you. No? Okay, I'll make it a statement. It's my understanding that there are 3 major utilities in this state that are going to be covered under this proposed bill. Montana Dakota Utilities, Black Hills Energy, and Rocky Mountain Power. Black Hills Energy is currently advertising on the internet that they want people to buy solar systems. Don't know whether any of you are aware of that or not, but they are. MDU just put forth an application to the Public Service Commission that is increasing the voided cost rate payments that they pay out. That was March 8th. I don't know whether any of you were aware of that or not, but if you would care to have one, I've got the application right here. That leaves Rocky Mountain Power as the one and only that's being the big problem, as I see it. I don't see anything on my utility bills that says I'm getting a subsidy other than the power that my system produces for my own use. And that's being called a subsidy? Excuse me. I paid $20,000+ for a 14-unit system. I made a major investment, and this bill wants to take all the investment, my return on investment, away from me. And everybody else is in the same boat. If this bill passes, it's going to kill the solar energy in this state. I don't know how many seconds I got left. I had a lot to go through here, but I'm going to condense it down to that. I am not receiving any kind of a subsidy. The bill should be killed.
We appreciate your testimony. I'm sorry, I should have you identify yourself when you started. Did you do that?
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I know you know me, Mr. Chairman Aarp, Dick Merklin. You've received emails from me, every one of you have. I know I get a little wordy, but
Thank you, Mr.
That's the
Merkel,
way
for
I
your
am.
testimony.
Thank you.
You want to bring someone in from the, what's the name? Stacy Schmidt, please proceed.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Schmidt, co-owner and operator of Range Solar and Wind. We were established in 2006. We're one of the oldest solar companies in Wyoming. Solar energy makes up only 0.06% of energy produced in Wyoming. That is directly because of our current statutes and laws. Our laws are the best in the country. Current statutes have kept net metering in check. There is no problem. Current statutes have kept PPAs, virtual net metering out of state, including a cap on solar allowed per meter. The problems talked about across the nation do not apply in Wyoming because of our current laws. Some utilities are stressing cost shifting, but there simply isn't transparency with that. Range Solar currently has 9 solar jobs in progress or in talks, all small. Each and every one is directly related to retirees, teachers, or ranchers as a way of investment for their future. If you say yes to this bill, you just pull the rug out from all of these Wyoming citizens and small businesses with these potential jobs. Your constituents overwhelmingly want to keep the current statutes. The amendment proposed to grandfather systems until 2031 is a slap in the face, as they need to produce past 10 years for payback. It needs to be for the lifetime of the system. Small solar is a way of the future. It is investment for any Wyoming citizen. It offers incentives to keep our youth in state via system inheritance or by working for a small solar company. Utility scale is not what people want in Wyoming. We sure don't like those turbine fields, do we? Our co-ops did not contact their customers about possible changes to their existing contracts. That's a bit dishonest. What happens if you say yes to Senate File 16? You take freedoms away from the Wyoming business individual to generate their own energy fairly and congruently with our fossil fuels. Say no to this bill. We must save our small solar companies.
I need to stop you, Ms. Schmidt, but I just want to make sure, ultimately what you're saying is you don't trust the Public Service Commission to make a reasonable and just rate?
They have already do oversee this in every contract that is done with net metering. And this is just a bad bill because we don't need the bill. Have the Public Service Commission already do this. Do not change the bill. It is fantastic. It has kept net metering in check all of these years at 0.06% of energy produced. We're in check. So just get rid of the bill. It's a bad bill. Set the Public Service Commission, into action, but we just say kill the bill.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Appreciate your testimony. We're going to go try to clear out the room here. Mr. Thomas, you get to be up next.
I didn't get to finish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm in favor of killing the bill myself. The reality is that the bill, if it won't kill rooftop solar, it will at least severely cripple it. It also really won't decrease anybody's rates, at least not significantly. I've got a large 10 kilowatt system, and it runs mostly my shop. And but when I turn on a machine, I'm instantly drawing energy from the grid. And so without net metering, the electricity I generated 5 minutes earlier would cost me like 6 to 10 times as much to buy it back. So without net metering, the rooftop solar just makes no economic sense at all. I think that perhaps the biggest problem created by the rooftop solar is it doesn't generate as much energy when it's needed during the peak hours, when electricity is more valuable. And a better solution than killing net metering would be to encourage solar panel users to install batteries that could feed energy back into the grid during the peak hours. And that could be as simple as just covering the cost of the installation for the batteries. There's really going to be a huge demand for the green electricity in the very near future. And rooftop solar can really provide that. And I really just don't think this is the right time to hamper that industry, but instead work with them, try to make it so they can feed energy back into the grid when it's mostly needed. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Questions, Mr. Thomas? Thank you much. Certainly appreciate you testifying today. Sorry, just end of the session in 2 hours. Can't cover it all. Mr. Patrick, you are up. But you're on mute, apparently. Hit the space bar.
How's that? How's that?
Perfect. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. In 2010, I installed a net metered solar array. I knew it'd take years to pay for itself, but I felt like it's something I could do in my meager effort to combat climate change. This morning, my inverter display said I've kept 222,570 pounds of carbon out of the atmosphere. The best way to capture carbon is to not produce it in the first place. I'm a 5th generation Wyoming rancher and have been a building contractor for 45 years. I've always sought methods and ways to build that improved the structure's efficiency. This starts with attention to passive solar design and includes better insulation in windows, LEDs, all of these things. If net metering is a subsidy, so are they. Are we going to have bills, penalize people who shut their windows at night and turn their heat down? These steps, like photovoltaics, harm no one and benefit society in the long run. This brings to mind the story of one of the local farmers in the 30s who became upset when he saw his neighbor building a windmill in direct line of his own. Cuss him, he said, there isn't going to be enough wind to go around. I installed my first active solar system in 1978 and it's still heating water today. The solar industry drives a lot of economic activity as one of the fastest growing sectors in today's economy. Creating new opportunities of employment is forward thinking and critical to our future. I'm involved in 3 net metering projects that are on hold because of these bills and the uncertainty of net metering. At the time when the rest of the world is moving to a more sustainable future, Wyoming should not be discouraging jobs and opportunity for responsible growth. Our biggest export in this state is young people. Not only do these policies immediately damage Wyoming's economy, but they make Wyoming a less desirable place for families and business to move to.
And
We need
Mr.
to embrace a future. The very survival of our state and world depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comments, questions? Seeing none for Mr. Patrick. Appreciate your testimony. I just don't see anything in the bill that's a referendum on solar power or the future or energy. I'm not seeing it yet, but if anybody else providing comments as we move forward has that, please. Yeah, come on down, sir. After I get through Mr. Cooper, you can be next. You can come sit here though. Mr. Cooper, floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Dan Cooper in Casper, and I have rooftop solar with battery backup. I haven't seen any evidence that there are any subsidies. Our net rooftop solar is like 0.06% of the total, and it would have to be many, many times higher than that before it would start affecting the costs of operating the grid. So we're getting the cart ahead of the horse here because we're asking for change when there's no evidence that it is needed or will be needed in any particular time. This bill sends a message to forward-looking companies that might want to relocate to Wyoming that we're providing uncertainty. We may oppose their efforts for energy efficiency, and we'll be driving away potential business from Wyoming. If eventually we do have a problem with the variability of solar, there are simple solutions such as setting instantaneous power rates so that customers would feed the power when the power company needs it. These are things that should be looked at before they're enacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Cooper?
I have one.
You do have one. Go ahead, Representative Air.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, did you hear the testimony of the foremost rate expert in the state earlier in our hearing here today?
Yes, I did.
Did you not think that was pretty good evidence that there was a subsidy occurring?
No, I do not. I have looked online a great deal to find out how the rates and subsidies might be calculated. Mr.
That was Representative Air.
Freeman.
Oh, Mr. Go ahead.
Said that there is a $60 a month subsidy. That makes no sense to me. If I had no solar, I have fairly good energy efficiency. I wouldn't be paying that much even without solar. So how could I be receiving that kind of a subsidy? I would welcome looking at data on how that was calculated, but upfront, I question it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Appreciate it. Sir, welcome. In-person testimony. Got
Mr.
2
Chairman,
minute and a half. It's all you.
Jeff Morgan out of Campbell County, Gillette, Wyoming. Thank you for having me here today. Hey, I've got meter bills and that I'm a net meter also. It's a great thing for the Wyoming people. You know, we pay $27 a month for our meter, no matter if it's on a livestock well or a house or a shop or a cabin. For the upkeep on lines, I met with Powder River Power and a couple of House representatives and a senator, and we went through this, and they wanted to opt out because they think it's better in between the cooperative and me as a net meter, and the rooftop. Now that gives it. I'm not a rooftop. I'm a ground mount under 25 kW. So kilowatt. So I'm a net meter. Anything over 25 kilowatt is a generation. They only sell where we net meter back and forth. Where net meter really helps us out is where we can net meter during the day and at night use power off the grid. We've already bought the line up to our house. We pay for upkeep every month at $27. Now as far as the subsidy, there is none. I can prove it. I pay no less than what I was, all but for the power. Now Powder River bought me out at the end of the year, and I had 13,000 kilowatts. They paid me a penny and a third for any extra power, which I buy from them over 9 cents a kilowatt. When it's at when I get it from them, I pay 9 cents a kilowatt. When they buy it from me, they pay a penny. And I don't mind that. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to save money. And for Wyoming, we ought to be promoting this. I'm telling you, it's a savior to the Wyoming folks. We're here for Wyoming. I've lived here all my life. Never moved. It's passionate. We really need net metering.
Thank you. Question. I don't think anyone up here says we don't want net metering or don't need net metering but go ahead, Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want you to understand, all we're doing with this bill is we're taking it out of the legislators and we're giving it to the PSC. We're not taking net metering away from you. I just want you to understand, we're not taking net metering away from you at all. We're just making sure that I'm a realtor. I don't get net metering. I don't know how to make rates. I don't understand rate making. And so I'm letting the experts in the industry get it and make the rates. So that's just what this bill is about.
Question if you would agree.
Wouldn't you agree?
No.
Okay.
Because the bill says in there, after 10 years, we might be exempt. They might be able to cut us off. After 10 years, they have the option to kill it. Okay. Also, why should we?
The future legislature?
No. In this bill says after 2031, that they can reevaluate and look at it. So we don't know if they're gonna kill it or not. My thing is, okay, say if you owned a business. Now I
just want to make sure we're on the same page. Yep. Taking out in 10 years, it would turn it back to the legislature and take it out of the PSC. It's not like the PSC we would have a new legislature who would create a new framework at that time.
Now we didn't read it that way. We read it that they have the option to, whoever has the system in effect right now would be grandfathered in for 10 years, and then it could change, right?
Could, yes.
Right.
That's fair.
So that's what we're worried about because none of us know, for an example. But my thing is, I don't want to tell you how to do your job. We all voted you in. And I thank you for your service. That we need you down here because we can't be down here all the time. So I don't want to tell Powder River Power how they need to stay in business. So they're working with me as a net meter. I have a contract right in hand with Powder River and them, and I try to send it to all you guys. It takes time. And so they made up a contract saying that, hey, and they fluctuate in what they buy it from. We don't care what they buy our power from. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to save money and save Wyoming.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. We have about 8 more minutes, committee. There are 9 people that I know have emailed the committee already. So if you've already emailed us and you're online, Mr. Winnie, if you want to do it, go ahead. And then have we got any utilities up, Mr. Bush? Do you want to be on deck? Or if you want, you don't have to be, but you have the option. I would like some utilities to testify. Go ahead, Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Winnie, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I'm going to talk a little bit more from an engineering perspective. The issue you partly face and this bill supports, and I support the bill, is that the value of a kilowatt hour at noon is less than a value of a kilowatt hour at 7 a.m. Why do I say that? Some years ago, Lower Valley Energy had the decision to make whether to put in another transmission line or do something else to reduce their load in the morning. What they did was they put little modules on people's hot water heaters so they could turn them off, and they obviated the need for the transmission line. So that's what you're facing here is the flexibility in rate making to make a time of day decision. The electronic meters that are on houses, at least out my way, could do that. And the other thing is you get into the fair share decision. They got to build a grid network for 100% of predicted load. When I was stationed out on the island of Guam.
Mr. Winnie, are you on the bill? I need you.
I'm on the bill.
Okay.
We
Go
saw
ahead.
the temperature because of the weather. We saw temperature get down to a very cold temperature. They had to build the grid to 100%. I support the bill, subject to your questions. Thank you.
Questions, Bill? Representative Hunt, you have a question for Mr. Winnie? No?
No.
Great.
But question.
Just a second. All right. Thank you, Mr. Winnie.
Okay, I respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if there's any other folks in the room from out of town who came down today to testify for this, that we could get to them before we have to close up.
Sure. If 2 of you would come up, if you don't mind sitting next to utilities. They're friendly. Mr. Bush, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Bush with Black Hills Energy. I'll try to be as quick as I can. We are in favor of the bill. I would like to say that the numbers, I think it was Representative Hunt asked earlier about numbers. So I did a quick email to our gentleman here in Cheyenne that handles the net metering systems. In 2017, we had requests for and put in and helped install 31 net meters. 2018, it was 107. 2019 was 135. 2020 was 183. And we're at 34 already for 2021.
So you would not say you're limiting net metering under Black Hills at all?
No, we are not limiting, and we work very well with the local installers. There was a question about, or perhaps an accusation about Black Hills advertising for people to buy rooftop solar. That's actually a group that advertises on Facebook, and we've already had legal recourse against them because it's false advertising. They use numbers and a program. I can't pull it up here. It's just a picture I have. They cite a program that we have that we don't actually have. There is no program that they do.
I've seen those ads.
But we are in support of the bill and subject to any questions. I'll just leave it at that because I know you're short on time.
You trust the PSC more than your legislature? Don't have to answer it.
Mr. Chairman, the PSC and the OCA work very well together to protect Wyoming's electricity customers, and we have the utmost faith in their abilities.
Appreciate that. Mr. Kaysen as well from Rocky Mountain.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Rick Kaysen with Rocky Mountain Power, and I'll try to do this in less than 1 minute. To the question about transparency in the process and everything else, which is a very valid question. The Public Service Commission's process is wide open. It is very transparent. It allows the public and all interested parties to participate in a hearing regarding the application. So I think the commission's expertise allows that. I enjoyed the question from Representative McGuire earlier about what's the number of people that are affected by this bill? And we heard a little, if I understood the question correctly, the impact on those folks. In the flip side, and I heard somewhere a little over 1,000 net metering customers may be affected by this. If I ask you to flip over the coin, there's over 280,000 other investor-owned utility meters, non-metered, net metering customers that are also part of the equation. So I just tried to bring this home. Allow the Public Service Commission to do what they do very well. They are the experts in this area. And there should be 3 policies, and I think the Public Service Commission already follows this with regards to net metering. Treat all customers fairly by avoid subsidies or cost shifting. We heard the subsidies, the cost shifts already exist through the OCA analysis. Secondly, accurately reflect both the benefits and the costs to the grid of rooftop and distributed solar systems. The commission has the expertise to analyze that. And lastly, don't distort the energy market by paying inequitable rates for excess rooftop generated power. And lastly, we support the bill. We are not in a position, we do not want to harm this industry. We are interested in fair treatment for all electric customers. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer questions any members of the committee may have.
Questions for Rocky Mountain Power? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Case.
sir.
Ma'am. Welcome to Corporation. Thanks for patiently waiting. Is it on green?
Oh, there it goes. Hi, I'm Jennifer Coolidge. I'm a landowner with solar panels. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the hearing me today. I know there's a lot of folks out there, but first thing I want to say is that I only learned about this less than 48 hours ago because of the transparency you spoke of, Representative Clifford. It was not there with my co-op. I've even spoken to them and asked them if they notified the 53 people, and they said no. And it was a fluke that I even found out about this. And so I drove over here from Laramie. I'm a disabled veteran. I retired recently and chose to move to Wyoming. Out of all 50 states, I had no preference, other than, looking at all my laundry list of where I wanted to live when I retired.
We're awesome. Yeah, welcome.
And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, when I found out, I actually picked where I lived so that I could be with a co-op versus a utility company for profit. That was just one of my laundry list items. But I can guarantee you, I have all the paperwork. I paid for my lines. I paid for my meter. I've paid for my solar panels. I have more than $40,000 invested in this. And this has been planned since I knew I was going to be medically retired. I don't want to lose my return on investment. That's pretty huge to me. And I'm on a fixed income now. I can't work. It was all I could do to come over here today. So this means a great deal to me. But when I started doing all my research and watching some of the sessions and committee meetings and what I could take in the last 48 hours, my head's about to explode right now. But I looked back at my contract.
You're not in favor of the bill. I just want to, you have about 10 seconds. You're
Okay.
For or against?
I am against this bill as it is written right now. Now, I offered up to my co-op, I would help them find a compromise because I think that's the most important thing. This is right now seems one-sided. And I want to help find that compromise, but I only knew about this 48 hours ago. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coolidge. Welcome. Certainly welcome. I'm happy to have you in the state. Sir, go ahead.
I am Larry Studi from Campbell County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having me here. I am a retired electrician supervisor from 2 coal mines. I run the electrical department and I'm also a rancher. And I keep hearing about where we get subsidies. I do have a solar panel array system at my ranch that feeds my property, Also, when I was in with the coal mine, as power lines were built, upgrades were made, we paid for them. There was nothing, excuse me, there was nothing that the power companies paid for. In the same way with out at the ranch, if I just put in a new water well, I paid $8,000 to have them come put in a new line and poles. That come out of my pocket. If I couldn't afford it, it goes on my bill and you pay this over a period of time. I'm against the bill the way it's written, as far as, again, because of the subsidies. And the gentleman over here that was from Laramie County, it's a municipality or power company. I have a son that was going to put this in. He backed out on his place because they will let you, they don't pay you. You put it in, they bank the hours, the kilowatt hours. If you leave, you lose everything. So instead of having a payback, my system is over $42,000. Instead of having a payback over X amount of time, it's going to be longer. All he would be receiving would be free power off of his array system. Then, of course, he would use power back at nighttime because there's no batteries. You're going to pull back. And they say that, again, that this system is for, because they're losing money. I don't believe it.
Okay.
Like I said, I was in on bidding for the coal mines that we bought power from power companies. I'm getting the bill the way it's written.
Great, thank you. Questions? Seeing none. I'm tempted to close public comment committee. You're good, Representative Olson. No one has any just absolute dying things that have not been said that they need to. Mr. Twyford, that is the best background I could have ever hoped for. Go ahead, the floor is yours. You can be the last one. The dude abides. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy that the background got me in. I am a solar owner, a new one from Sheridan County. I'm happy to be here today as part of the overwhelming majority of citizens present here that do oppose, although have been largely unrecognized on the committee today. I'm here to urge you to kill this bill. The bill is unnecessary, it's unneeded, and it's anti-business. There are over a dozen small businesses in Wyoming providing 150 jobs, a number that's growing. This bill is early to need. It is anti-small business. It's based on unstudied, unfounded numbers looking at subsidies. Subsidies go two ways. We do have a great deal of data that show that the resilience offered to the grid by Tide Green Generation also subsidize the utilities in the other direction. And any credible study needs to consider the subsidies that run both directions. So I urge you all to oppose, and in the interest of transparency, this vote would be early to need. And the hearing today, I feel, does not represent the overwhelming citizen opposition to the bill. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Twyford. All right, any questions? Not seeing any. Committee, I would just like to recognize we have 14 people in the room who still like to talk, 7 of which I know are against the bill because they've emailed 2, I believe, are electric cooperatives. Not sure their thoughts, but I'm guessing if we exempt them, they're happy. And 2 others I don't know, but I just don't have time to get to them. So with my apologies to having to run to the Senate across the hall because they moved my bills around, we're going to close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd make a motion to table this bill for several reasons. First of all, the bill is calling for the Public Service Commission to conduct hearings. That's got the cart before the horse. We've got a limited number of providers. They should be talking to their customers. And they should come to us with what the numbers are if there's an adjustment, if there's a rate, a multiplier or whatever. We're talking about 1,600 customers divided amongst several different providers. The providers need to talk to their customers, then go to the PSC, say, these are our findings, and then the PSC come to us and say, this is what we think would be appropriate. But right now, I'm not going to take action on anecdotal data when I have no idea what the adjustment may or may not be. You know, if I may continue,
Sure,
in my
can we-
business,
Pretend you
be
didn't
very
make the
quick.
table motion, you'll do it after.
Okay,
Go ahead.
well,
Yep.
I'll be very quick. In my business, when the price of fuel goes up and we have to put an adjustment on based on how far away a customer is, my manager would come to me with a spreadsheet and say, okay, we've got these customers. This is how far away they are. This is how much the price of fuel has changed. This is how much it's going to adjust our profitability. And then I would call my customers and explain that to them. I don't see anything different at all about this. So anyway, I would make a motion to table, and I apologize for adding the dicta on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Usually when motion to table, we don't really have discussion, but if you need discussion,
is this indefinitely?
I would just say with the calendar, if it gets tabled, I have 5 bills Monday and Wednesday, and I'm not going to bring it back up. No. So, all right, that is a motion. You have discussion real quick, Representative
So
Roscoe?
the motion,
The motion is,
Chairman, is undebatable.
I'm allowing 30 seconds for everybody. I'm trying to be so fair with knowing that we have bills and concurrences up. Representative Roscoe, 30
Thank you.
seconds, speaker piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to agree with my fellow representative that enough hasn't been proposed, that it's too early to do this. And I don't really understand why, if we reach 5%, that we couldn't redo that at some point, but we're not even close to that. And 5% is not going to sway the vote one way or the other. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and just to let people know, if the motion to table is not adopted, then we will ask for a motion on the bill and go the other way, just so everybody knows I'm trying to be fair. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for those new members, we've been doing this for 2 years. 2 years. So.
Okay, Representative Air.
Well, it's not just the net metering customers that are being affected. It's all the other customers that are paying the subsidy that are being affected. And to say that we haven't studied it in any depth is totally false, because we have more than anecdotal data. We have the most knowledgeable and best rate experts in our state saying that there's a problem here. We have a subsidy. And I think they have the knowledge and the expertise to determine that that is the case. And if we kick the can down the road, it's only going to get worse. We need to do something now, and we need to take action on this bill.
Any other Representative Hunt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In all due respect to Representative Duncan, being a new member of the committee, I've not been privy to those conversations. And I have heard some from both sides of this, but I mean, the examples given about Arizona and Utah and so forth, where there's multiple percentage points of people who have installed this. I don't like to use the euphemisms and so forth to kick the can, but I mean, we're talking about thus far 1,600 people at most in the next 12 months. What's it going to be? A few hundred more? And the total right now is barely 0.5%. And so I understand the concerns of the co-ops, of the utilities, and of the good vice chairman. I just don't think that this is in a death spiral yet, if that's even what it is. But anyway, on and with Representative McGuire's motion to table. Thank you.
Blackburn or Clausen, thoughts? Representative Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have studied this till we're all blue in the face. People have been in corporations a while. I think there's always something we can learn. And for the new members, maybe it might help you to look back at the minutes for the last 4 years, maybe. That might help out.
8 for some of us. But go ahead. Sorry.
8 for some of us.
Representative Clausen or Clifford?
On against the motion.
Okay.
Can I have one more statement?
I would like to vote no on the bill, but I see where this is headed, so I'll support my colleague for
We'll
the
see.
table.
Representative Air, go ahead. So going to be a long interim, I'm guessing, but.
Folks, I would just really urge you to at least move the bill forward. We can talk about it on the floor. I think we've studied it to death. And we're not going to kill the industry if we pass the bill. It's going to be turned over to the experts to make the determination of how to set up a system to regulate the net metering customers.
One more time.
All right, so the motion to table is the current motion on the bill. So if you vote aye, we will table the bill. If you vote no, I will accept other motions. All of those in favor of tabling the bill, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to table Senate File 16. Thank you so much, everyone, for testifying on both sides. I'm just guessing we'll discuss net metering all through the interim. If we do get through our workload of our next bills on Monday, I will talk to the members and see if the other 4 members' feelings change on the bill, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you.
There's no winners or losers, I think, on this issue currently.